Hello everyone. This is a brief video walkthrough of some things I think you might find useful as you begin work on the annotated bibliography for the fear essay. At this point, you should have already watched and read all of the content in the Unit 1 folder leading up to this point. And if you've done that, you've already seen the two specific lectures that are related to this assignment in addition to the supplementary videos that are also geared toward this. All the other things that we have done up to this point are also necessary for us to be able to complete this. So all of the readings that we've done up to this point, all of the watching of the TED videos, we need all of these things in order to be able to complete the annotated bibliography assignment. For this video, I would like to specifically focus on the creation of the bibliographic entries for the annotated bibliography. The notes already contain an explanation of how, but we do have one substitution that we do have to do, because if you notice on the example that I have here, and this is an example from one of the sets of lecture notes related to this assignment, and in this we see that there is an entry for the article 10 ways we get the odds wrong. But notice here the bibliographic entry says that this entry comes from the Patterns for College Writing book. And as you know, this is the book that I normally use in my regular 1301 classes, but dual enrollment students don't use this book. And so we will have to cite this article a little bit differently as a result. Now, in your current Unit 1 folders, I have placed a printable copy that I'm sure that you have already printed if you have access to a printer so that you could read it and annotate it. And that's all well and good, but the one that we're going to cite is actually going to be the official copy that's from the STC databases. So let me navigate to the STC data page where I've already called up the article 10 ways we get the odds wrong. This is the exact same article that you have, except this is the version that appeared in the print version of the publication Psychology Today, which is where this was published. So let me go ahead and click on that, and this is the actual article itself, and it has the page numbers, it has the color pictures, and the whole 9 yards, but we get to read it online. But it's just like it would be if we had a print copy in our hands, and we can see the page numbers and everything. So if you end up using this article in your annotated bibliography, you'll need to use this particular version of it or this particular source of it to create that. But the great news about that is that the work is already done for us. If you look over here on the right hand side at this little icon right here, it looks like a little yellow piece of paper, and if I hover my mouse over it, it says Cite. So if I click on that, this is the neatest thing, is it comes up with all of the ways that this could be cited with some of the most common citation styles. So there are many different citation styles, and you always have to find out which one your professor is using in a given class so that you can follow that citation style. In this class, we use MLA, which stands for Modern Language Association. So this is the one that we want. Now, it is important to note that when you're using this little cite button over here, that the vast majority of the time the entries are correct and you can just copy paste them and make a few minor adjustments and then you're good to go. But it is important that you know that it's good to proofread and make sure that there aren't any mistakes. In other words, don't just, copy paste it and don't look at it. It is important to proofread. Two of the most common mistakes that you might see in an entry is that you might see that there is something in all caps. There shouldn't be anything in any entry that's in all caps, but if you see that, it's super easy to spot and it's very easy to fix as well. The only things that are capitalized in a works cited entry would be the first letter of each main word in the title of the article, in the author's name, or in the name of the publication itself. Notice nothing is in all caps. So everything looks to be correct here, so I can copy paste this and I could put it into my annotated bibliography. But if I go back over here, you'll notice that the font is a little bit different. The font that we use in MLA format should be Times New Roman. So when you copy paste that entry into your annotated bibliography, you'll need to make sure that you double space it. You'll need to make sure that you put it in Times New Roman, and you will also have to make sure that you have the proper indentations. Remember that the entries begin flush on the left side of the margin, and then second and subsequent lines are tabbed over about ½ inch, and you don't measure that, you just simply hit the tab key, and this creates the hanging indent for you. And what that does is it makes it easier for a professor to see at a glance how many entries you have in an annotated bibliography, and it also allows us to see the same thing when you have the works cited page in your paper. The next thing I'd like to show you is how to create those entries for the TED Talks. Undoubtedly, some of your sources will come from TED Talks, and so I have an example here in the notes. If you want to take the shortcut version for how to create your entries, you will model yours based on this one. So, for example, if you chose the TED Talk by Andrew Solomon, you would follow this formula, Solomon, comma, Andrew, period, but then you would have to put the name of his TED Talk, and then you would also have to navigate to the TED website to find the specific name of the specific conference where he gave that speech, and the same would be true if you chose any other TED Talk. So you do have to navigate there and find, so you can find the name of this. And then after that, you put the name of the website, which is TED : Ideas Worth Spreading. Then there's a comma and the URL for that particular TED Talk, followed by the date of access. This is something in MLA format that is not required by all professors, but I do ask that you include the date of access for anything that you accessed from an online source. And you may not remember the day that you very first watched that TED video or that you very first read a particular article, but put something that makes sense, something that is between when the paper was assigned and when it is due. So obviously you had to have watched the TED video prior to this point, and we know that you had to have watched the TED videos by the due date for the video quizzes, so that's always a good date that you could use there. So this would be the shortcut version for how to create the TED entries. Again, you'd have to navigate to the TED website and to your particular TED Talk so that you could get all of the relevant information for the entry. If you want to know how to do it by hand, then I have shown you how to do that in the notes, but I'll go ahead and show you here in the video as well. I'm going to go to the Purdue OWL website, and OWL here stands for Online Writing Lab. This is a very famous website that I think practically everybody uses. It will answer a lot of the questions you have, not only about MLA format, but also APA format and a whole host of other things related to writing college-level research papers. It's a really great resource. I'm going to go to the search page. You could also go to the sitemap. And what I like to do is I like to go to the search page and type in a key word or a key phrase to come up with the most relevant things. Now, the TED Talks are lectures. They are, you could also consider them as conference proceedings. I would accept either one of those. So I'm going to type in MLA Works Cited Entry for an online lecture. Let's see if we can find that. And I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. And let's see, speeches, lectures, or other oral presentations. All right, so I have found what we need. So the TED Talks are lectures, so they are going to follow this basic formula. But since these TED lectures are videotaped and recorded, and the best of them are placed on the TED website, we do have to add some things after this in order to have an accurate entry. This would actually be what it would look like if you attended a lecture, a live lecture, maybe if we had a guest speaker, for instance, at STC, and if we were not in the middle of a pandemic, and we had an opportunity to hear somebody speak, and you were citing that, then this is what it would look like. Since we are citing the lectures from an online vantage point, then we have to have some things here to indicate that. So if I go back to this entry here from the notes, you'll see that I have already done that. I have already done the detective work and determined that we need to include the URL and the date of access to indicate that we saw these lectures online. All right, so that should help you create all of the TED Talk entries. Now, the only thing that we have left would be the articles from Lapham's Quarterly. They all came from an online journal. So when you're looking up how to cite those things, let me just go ahead and navigate back to the search bar here and do a new search. Remember from the print notes, one of the things that you have to do before you can figure out how to create an entry is you have to figure out what it is that you have. And so Lapham's Quarterly is a journal. So I can type in MLA. I may have to open a new search tab here. Let's see. There we go. I'm going to type in MLA works cited entry for an online scholarly journal and see what I come up with. And sometimes you have to do some hunting and digging to figure out what it is that you have in order to figure out how to cite it. And I'm going to scroll down until I find something that looks like what I need. I don't need an ebook or an image, but you also see that, here we go, an article in an online scholarly journal. We also see that this is a resource for you to go to anytime you want to look up how to cite something. Now, your school issued you, or they were supposed to have issued you, a textbook for this class. I would encourage you to use that as a resource as well. Generally, most textbooks have a section in one of the later chapters devoted to MLA format, APA format, and they have a whole host of examples of how to cite a variety of sources in a couple of the most common citation styles. But this is what we need right here because this is an online journal that also appears in print. So I have the actual print articles or the print journal myself, but we don't have that. We have the one that is online, but it also appears in print. So these are going to be very similar to what your entries will look like for the Lapham's Quarterly articles. The Lapham's Quarterly articles will begin like all other entries with the author's last name, comma, first name, a period, and you can go ahead and put the name that is listed in Lapham's Quarterly for each one of the things that you read. If you look at the end of each of the Lapham's Quarterly articles, they have a little section about the author and about where it was originally published. And most of the things that are in Lapham's Quarterly articles are things that appeared elsewhere, and they're actually just excerpts. They're not entire articles. So let me go ahead and open up a tab and navigate to Lapham's Quarterly, because you'll need to get some information from there in order to do the bibliographic entries. But if you're watching this video, you'll get what you need here, at least in a general sense. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to go to the magazine, and I'm going to click on All Issues. And this is what the cover looks like for all of the Lapham's quarterly issues. And I'll be looking for the one that deals with fear. And it's going to have that same picture of Medusa that you see in Blackboard. And notice that I'm just here on the website. We're not purchasing anything. I'm just showing us where we need to go to get the information to create the bibliographic entries. So I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit bigger, and we can see that this came out in the summer of 2017. We can see that this is volume 10, number 3. You'll need to know that when it comes time to citing the articles. All the rest of the information you already have in front of you with those articles. You have the name of each person who wrote those articles. You have all of those things provided for you. So you don't actually need to do anything else but get that information in order to create the entry. But if you want to see other articles that are available online, they have a few that are available for free. All of the ones that I got and included in our class folder are the ones that are included here for free. So you'll notice Petrified Forest is here, and there are the others that I have included as well. So if you wanted to use any additional articles from the free version of the Fear issue of Lapham's Quarterly, you would be welcome to do that. I don't really think it's necessary, given that we have so many videos and that we have so many articles already to deal with, but these are the things that you need to know in order to create the bibliographic entries for Lapham's Quarterly. So I hope this video supplement clarifies a few things and kind of takes you step by step through some of the things that you need to do to create those bibliographic entries. So this is the assignment. I'm going to click back into the annotated bibliographic example here. And remember that the one that I have in the notes, it's just the start of the assignment. So I've got one entry there, I've got 2 entries there, and I've got a placeholder for 3 entries. Remember, you need to have an entry for each of the sources that you intend to use in the actual paper. This is where I will help you figure out whether you are on track and whether you will soon be ready to write that paper. You will need to look on the assignment sheet to see how many sources are required minimally for this paper to know how many entries you need for the Works Cited page. It will take you probably about 4 or 5 pages, given that it's double-spaced and given that the bibliographic entries take up anywhere from 3 to 5 lines, depending on what you've got going on. So notice the very first entry, I've got the working thesis, and I've got the bibliographic entry for the 10 ways we get the odds wrong, but from the Patterns for College Writing book, and that takes up a fair amount of space. So just ballpark estimate, it should take, at least 4 typed double-spaced pages, give or take, for you to be able to create your annotated bibliography. It is largely summary with, 3 to 4 lines or so at the end of each summary explaining how you will use each source. And it is also important to note that you will have one thesis. You only have one thesis, one claim, one point to prove in the paper. So you'll only have one thesis, one claim, one big point to prove in the annotated bibliography. And what you put in the annotated bibliography will help me determine whether you're on the right track. But again, before I close this video out, it is really important that you read the lecture notes because I talk very specifically about how to come up with the working thesis. You don't just pull it out of, it's not like pulling a rabbit out of a hat. The answer to the working thesis comes from the sources, not from you. The working thesis is a combination of you and the sources. It is not something that you just make up. It's not something that you just come up with on your own. Working thesis statements are developed primarily by developing a good research question and then formulating or finding the answer to that. The two prompts that I have provided you that are grab and go, what can we learn from our fears or how can we overcome them? Those are the research questions. Your answers to those questions, the specific answers, come from the sources. So if you go back and look at the first set of notes where I talk about how to develop a working thesis, I show you how to fill in those blanks. That's one of the biggest things that you need to do before you begin working on the annotated bibliography assignment, because everything on the assignment is related to that working thesis. And one last thing is that it is highly unlikely that anybody will be using devil's advocate at all in the paper. It does not lend itself to being used for prompts 1 or 2, and there's probably not enough in terms of what we get out of the other sources for you to develop a working thesis statement. If you choose prompt 3, that would make use of that. It was a great article to illustrate how to annotate and think critically about the things that we read, but it's not probably something that you will end up choosing or using in your paper. All right, that's it. That's a wrap. You have everything at your disposal now, hopefully, to help you create this annotated bibliography assignment. If you have any questions, do let me know. Please reach out. I'm here to help. You'll have a great day, a great afternoon, and a great week.